Welcome.
This is another episode of the Defenders of Business Value podcast, a podcast where we talk about what makes a business valuable, learn the tips and tactics to increase your company's value that only veteran deal makers know. And now, here's your host, Ed Meisogland.
Welcome to another episode of the Defenders of Business Value. I'm your host, Ed Meisogland. Today, I've been getting a number of requests to talk about business valuation on, how I value companies in sale preparation or when we're on the buy side, when we're looking at target companies, how do I value them? And last week we talked a little bit about market multiples, and this week we're talking about something called telescopic observation. And this is a framework to drill down pretty deep into what makes a business tick. And, I don't do that for every company, but a lot of them. And if you're on the buy side or even on the sell side, it will help you figure out where the company is as it relates to the industry. I mean, this is a little bit further into the weeds when you are evaluating companies. And as you think about industry analysis, what you're trying to do is almost like HR does for evaluating people, where they do a 360 review. It's kind of the same framework. And so historically, and I still do it. I still use IBIS World as a source for industry information. But generally speaking, when I'm trying to dig in and get a total understanding of the industry and the business and how it sits in the industry, I use this telescopic framework. So this, Michael Porter's 5 forces was, a lot of people use that, and that includes competitive rivalry, supplier power, buyer power, threat of substitution, and threat of new industry. Or a new entry. That's what Porter's five forces model is. And you deep dive each of those. Now, in telescopic observation, this is an entirely different way of looking at it. So, you undoubtedly have heard of the SWOT analysis. And the SWOT analysis is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. The SWOT analysis is concerned with the analysis of the organization's internal and external environment. And it aims to identify the strengths and weaknesses, and helps you avoid the threats and exploit the opportunities. So I don't know if you knew this, but the SWOT analysis started at Harvard, and that was the guys that started was George Albert Smith Jr. and Roland Christensen. And so and this dates back into the 1950s. And so they started developing this, and then they deployed it. Let's see, I believe it was in 1963, at a Harvard Business Policy conference. They introduced it, and it's been nomenclature there ever since. So the deficiencies was that the SWOT analysis was rooted in vagueness. All right. So when I look at a company and I'm identifying its strengths, it's just a cursory review. It's a matter of looking at it and identifying the topical, meaning I don't want to say superficial, but when you're just looking at something, you can identify what its strengths and weaknesses are just by looking at, a quick Google search will tell you a lot about a company. But that's the deficiency. It doesn't deep dive you. So if you're thinking about buying a company, or you're doing 90% leverage like the SBA is offering these days, and you're putting your personal guarantee on the line, you may want to make sure that you have a real clear understanding of this, of the industry, of the business, as well as the industry it operates in. And so back to the SWOT. So this telescopic observation then gets introduced. All right. And telescopic observation is an acronym. And I'm going to go through each of these as a primer for you to think about it. But the overlay is, with each letter in the acronym, you apply the SWOT analysis. And that's the secret to this thing. And so as you dig in, let me go through each one of these. So on the telescopic, the first is technological advancements. All right. The next is economic considerations. The L is legal and regulatory requirements. The E is ecological and environmental issues. S is the sociological issues. C is competition. O is organizational culture. P is portfolio analysis. And I get a lot of questions about what does that mean? Well, if there's multiple companies within the entire organization, that's what that portfolio analysis means. It also can mean products. What are the products in the portfolio? I means international issues, and C is cost cutting, cost efficiencies, and cost structures. So you can see as you go through that, if you apply the strengths and weaknesses and the opportunities and the threats, you get a much clearer understanding of that particular business. Now let's move over to the observation. So with the observation side is more, so the telescopic side, let me back up. The telescopic side is more external. All right. So it's more what's going on outside of the company, and how matters can affect the company. Now, the observation side, however, that is on the inside. So when we start looking at it, we'll begin with the O. So the organizational core and competencies and capabilities. Next is E. Who are the buyers? Who are the buyers for the product or the service that the company offers? S is suppliers. Who is providing the product and the raw materials for the business? E is e-commerce. So can you operate, what's your online store? And that's becoming a real big issue right now. Is, has the company evolved in order to take advantage of using the internet as a means for revenue? Now, moving on to R is resource audit. What are the resources that are available within the company to perform its product or to make its product or perform its service? V is the value chain. Help understand where value is created all along the process of either making the product and delivering it, or performing the service and doing it. A is alliances. Do you have any kind of, or does it have any kind of partnerships, networks, or joint ventures? Where are the synergies that occurs? T, total quality management. All right, that's pretty self-explanatory. I, industry key factors for success. O is the organizational structure. How is the company structured? N is new entrants. the barriers to entry. Who is going to be your threat? And S is substitute products and services. So you can see, this is a deeper dive into the industry. And again, you can rely on, your IBIS Worlds and some of the other publications to provide this kind of information. But ultimately, the biggest thing is you do the work. You need, especially if you're buying a business. I mean, if you're a valuation guy and deal guy like me, I mean, it's one thing to dig. I have to dig in order to make sure I understand what we're selling. But from a buyer standpoint, you really need a clear understanding of that business in order for you to take that next step, especially post-acquisition integration. The more you understand about the industry and the business, the better and quicker you can get up to speed and start adding some value. So these next few episodes are going to be shorter, but I've received a number of questions about how we do our business, how we value companies, how we look at the industry, how we position companies to go to market, how we find buyers and such. So over these next couple episodes, I'll continue to talk a little bit more about what we do and how we do it. So if you have a question, certainly drop an email to us. We read all of those questions, and we want to be a resource for everybody to hopefully, either if you want to get into business, hopefully we can help you do that, or if you're looking to exit a business, we want to. We always believe that the best clients that we work with are the most educated, and they understand what it is that the service. It's so much more than just finding a buyer. That's the easy part. For us, it's value positioning. What makes the most sense, and and make a great deal for both parties. So thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.
This was another episode of the Defenders of Business Value podcast. For more episodes packed with strategies to increase the value of your business, visit defendersofbusinessvalue.com for show notes, transcripts, and free tools to start you on your journey. Subscribe now so you don't miss any future episodes.